Back with the WMAY morning news feed. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you so much for hanging out. It is, of course, a Monday morning, and I know you've got a lot of other things to do on a Monday morning, but appreciate you taking time with us here on WMAY as we talk about a lot of different issues that are impacting the communities listening and all across the state. And outside of hosting this morning talk show, I also cover the Illinois State House pretty closely. And one thing that happened Friday afternoon, as is typical with a what we call a news dump, Governor J.B. Pritzker signed legislative maps into effect that ultimately were revised from maps that were signed by the governor back in June. And this all deals with who's going to be your state representative, who's going to be your state senator for the next 10 years, something that's determined by state lawmakers after the U.S. Census. So leading up to Friday, what happened was lawmakers had a June 30th deadline to pass legislative maps, but we didn't have the full census data. So instead of waiting and allowing for a bipartisan commission to draw maps, for instance, with the latest data, state lawmakers passed with Democrat majorities. No Republicans supported this. They passed maps in May. The governor signed those, and they were based off of estimates. There have been lawsuits filed against those maps by Republicans, but also by the Mexican-American Legal Defense Foundation. But you also have the U.S. Census data releasing the final set of numbers that are really accurate, not estimates, and those are the numbers that are supposed to be used for redistricting. Well, that didn't stop the Democrats from revising the maps. They went ahead and revised those maps, sent them to the governor earlier this month, and the governor signed those Friday. Are those maps any better than what were the estimates? Several groups coming out against the maps, including the Mexican-American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, saying that the maps violates their constituents' rights despite a growing Latino population. They say that the maps are actually decreasing Latino influence and the ability for Latinos to elect somebody of their choice. But it's not just the group MALDEF. You also have Illinois African Americans for Equitable Redistricting. And joining us right now is Valerie Leonard. She's with the group. We were also going to try to connect with Norman Montgomery this morning. Unfortunately, couldn't make that connection happen. But Valerie, I'm very glad that you were able to join us this morning. I guess tell us what the Illinois African Americans for Equitable Redistricting, what's your position on the governor's signing of the maps Friday?
Okay, great. First of all, thank you so much for having me, and I could not help but chuckle when you said news dump. Really good choice of words. Our position is we are really, really concerned about these maps. In fact, they have cut the potential for African Americans to elect candidates of their choice by 50%. We won't feel that effect right now, but over time, as communities change, we will definitely feel the impact.
So with these maps, you're essentially saying that you're not going to have as strong of the ability to represent lawmakers at the state house that would be reflecting the will of the people of the African American population.
That's exactly right. Back in 2011, 16 African American state rep districts were drawn and 8 Senate districts were drawn. We fast forward to today, that number's been cut in half. We only have 8 state rep districts that are majority black and 4 Senate that are majority black. And, people are saying, oh, well, it's okay. You guys can still elect candidates of your choice. You still have pluralities, blah, 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 blah. But, this to me is a really good way to use the Illinois Voting Rights Act to actually water down black voting power. This stuff is all lawful within the context of the Illinois Voting Rights Act. You can do coalition districts, you can do influence districts, and coalition districts are those districts where two minorities can come together, two minority groups can come together and elect the candidate of their choice. And then the influence districts are those districts where you have significant population say about 15%, where you can influence a district, the outcome. But what has happened, it seems like a pattern, where they could have drawn majority black districts, districts we're going to call a majority 50% or higher. They could have done that in up to 18 different instances. So we actually, even though we lost population as black folks, if you look at the data and where we're distributed, you really could have optimally drawn 18 districts, right? But they chose not to draw 18. They chose not to even restore the 16. And when I say those, I'm talking about Illinois Democrats who are in charge of this process. Rather than use majority districts, they have substituted at least 4 of those with majority minority districts where blacks have the plurality.
We're talking with
8 of them.
Yeah, we're talking with Valerie Leonard. She's with the Illinois African Americans for Equitable Redistricting. Valerie, I believe that we also have Norman now joining us on WMAY, and I want to make sure that I've got this conference line in just right. Norman, are you with us?
Sure, Greg. How are you today?
Good. And Valerie, can you hear Norman?
I can. Hello, Norman. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Valerie. How are you today?
Good to hear both of you. All right. So, we've been hearing Valerie lay out some of her concerns about the maps that the governor signed Friday. What kind of communication, Norman, has there been between your group, Democrats in control of the process, and the governor's office who ultimately approved these revised maps?
Greg, we haven't had much conversation between us and any of the politicians. And I'll be honest with you, the conversation with the politicians is basically between Valerie. I'm executive director of a 501c3, and we don't do politics per se.
Right.
But we do data. And Valerie reached out to us to get some help in doing the state of Illinois data. It's big data, and we do big data. So we gave Valerie the aid in terms of slicing up the state and trying to determine what the most equitable positions are.
And from your determination, Norman, this map is not reflective of equitable representation across the state?
Greg, when we started this out, Valerie and I had the opinion that, it wasn't really about trying to get more black districts, but looking at what we had and trying to build on what we had in hand. A lot of people are going after the two in the bush, but we're more interested in what we had in hand. And we wanted to make sure that whatever came out of this redistricting cycle, that we didn't lose anything substantially. And we're talking about community assets here. But we just can't seem to get that in line. I mean, it's 1 year it's this, or 1 10-year period it's going to be this, and the next 10-year period it's going to be that. And consistency, if you expect us to carry the weight, we'd like some consistency in what we face. That's all. I mean, this is nothing unrealistic. This is nothing unreasonable. We agree with carrying our own weight, but we just need to have consistency in order to do it.
We're talking with Norman Montgomery and Valerie Leonard. They're with the group Illinois African Americans for Equitable Redistricting. Valerie, the question to you, what kind of conversations have you had with Democrats in leadership at the legislature and with the governor's office? And is your group considering, or have you filed the lawsuit against these maps as Republicans have and as MALDAF has?
Okay. Answer to the first question, I feel like the communication has been one way. We've had situations where, people in the legislature and people from the governor's office have listened, or shall I say they let us vent our concerns. I don't feel like they were listening, because if they were listening, we would not be in this predicament. And in terms of the legal action, we are definitely considering legal action. We're looking at different alternatives now.
Valerie, Norman, thank you both for taking time with us this morning and laying out for us the concerns you have, because we're seeing the concerns raised even by MALDEF. Their staff attorney said the maps do not reflect the census data and Latino population growth over the last decade. It's unfortunate the governor went along with the plans that shortchanges the community. MALDEF challenged the maps and will continue and looking into that. So just a handful of different voices here, that are trying to get across that they want equitable representation. They want to be represented as the census shows, and a lot of lawmakers push to slow things down. But the Democratic majority went ahead and moved forward. Is that something you guys were asking for? Was it for them to just take some time and to actually allow for public input and public participation in this?
Yeah, we did urge them to. Honestly, we urged them to go ahead because we did not want them to go into a position where there is a commission and you're flipping a coin to see who's in charge.
Right.
We believe at the time that ACS data and the methodologies that were used to collect ACS data were sufficient. They were very similar to using real census data. So we didn't push back so much on the schedule, although we did push back on the way that the hearings were handled, right? People did not have enough time to prepare. There was not sufficient engagement in the African-American community. We had to write letters to ask them to hold hearings at times and places that were accessible. We did not get the data that we requested. We even did a FOIA, and we never got the information back. And then when the census data did come back, you can see how messed up the map was. And again, we didn't have much concern about that because, state law provides for those cases where if the map that you do is not efficient, then you have to fix it. So we preferred to go that route, but even so, they did not listen to us, and the hearings, the second go-round, were even more rushed, and the experiences were worse than the first go-round. I really feel like the Democrats were tone deaf, and they were dead set on maintaining what is already a veto-proof majority, and even doubling down. Right now they have a majority in the House of 73 or 41 or something like that, but they've got
73 to 48, I think.
They've got 73 districts now, and they want to push that to 80, right? So I think at this point it's just greed. They really could allow for more representation of minority groups and still have a veto-proof majority. They were able to do that 10 years ago, and they should be able to do that now based on the data that we see.
Valerie, Leonard, Norman, Montgomery, both of you, thanks so much for taking time with us here on the WMAY Morning News Feed. And let's stay in touch as this continues to play out, because the maps are in the courts right now. We'll watch where exactly this goes. We'll talk soon, okay?
Okay, awesome. And thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. That is Valerie Leonard and Norman Montgomery with the group Illinois African Americans for Equitable Redistricting here on the WMAY Morning News Feed. All right.